of that, I want to actually chip this in. So, this webinar is no way a substitute to any program that has been held by your department or your school about any advice or anything like this. It's not a substitute. It's just kind of an additional knowledge that we want you guys to acquire. And also, should anyone, this session, we want it to be very interactive. So if anyone should have a question, you can let us know in the general chats, but we will like and we encourage that you will raise your hand and we will give you the opportunity to voice your concerns and whatever question that you do have. Yeah. So with that said, I want to introduce our panelists, and in no order of relevance, let us welcome Dr. Owusua Yamwa. I hope I had the name right. No, okay.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that's our first panelist, Dr. Owusua Yamwa. And please, can you give a little background about yourself, a brief background about yourself, and in relation to, since you're a doctor, in relation to, this topic, going about rising of your thesis. Yes, so a brief one.
Okay. Hi, my name is Owusua Yamwa. I am a research scientist at Case Western Reserve University. I currently do research, community-based participatory research, working with mostly people of color, low-income households to understand the barriers to food access and also developing interventions to improve healthy food access, not just in Cleveland, but also across Ohio. So that is what I currently do. So I have an undergrad in development planning from KNUST in Ghana and a master's in urban studies from Minnesota State. And then I got my PhD in University of Toledo in spatially integrated social science. So with experience with thesis, so I guess for me in Ghana with my undergrad, we had to do a thesis for our undergraduate, not a group thesis, just individual thesis. So that experience was really helpful coming in. So I think that's also like, I've met some people even in a PhD program who've never written a thesis by themselves because the masters, they didn't write anything, and then undergrad they didn't write. So I think that kind of differentiates like students and like your approach when you are trying to do something like that. What did you want me to say again? Does that fine?
Yes, thank you very much, okay. Dr. Owusua. Yeah, and our second panelist is in the person of Rafia J. Malik. Well, I hope I had the name right also. Please, can you give a brief introduction, a background about yourself and any experience really relating to this topic, writing of your graduate thesis, or kind of, yes.
Sure, yeah, you pronounced my name right. I'm Rafia Malik, and I'm currently a graduate research assistant at Georgia State University. I know, with me, I have 2 masters, and then my undergrad was from Pakistan. And we did a group thesis, not an individual thesis. So that was helpful because, in group thesis, usually 1 or 2 people are working, rest are just free writers. So I was one of the ones that was working way too hard on it. Then I came for my master's, did my master's in public policy research from Hofstra University, New York, and did a thesis there. And it was a statistical quantitative analysis using the secondary data set. Then I went back and taught for 5 years. So I supervised a lot of theses for a lot of undergrad and 2-year master's degree programs in Pakistan. Then I came back for my master's in sociology from University of Oklahoma, and I did my thesis recently. That was also a statistical analysis paper, so quantitative data analysis. But now during my PhD, what I'm doing is all qualitative data analysis, along with a little bit here and there projects with quantitative analysis. So I have written at least 3 theses by now. So, and there are things that I've learned on my way and I'm still learning that I would love to share with you guys that would make your life easier. Because my first master's, my undergrad, I did the hard way. So my last master's was better. But now when I do work, I'm recently publishing papers. It's like I know the tricks that I use, and that saves a lot of. So that's all from me.
All right. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate your time and effort and all of that. And yeah, we'll be ready for, your experiences. And our third panelist or last panelist is in the person of Ms. Adimade Mabadiji. Well, I hope I had the name right here. If not, you can help me with that. Yes. So please, I want you to give a brief description about yourself and your background, and also any experience that you have in this relating to this topic. That's writing of thesis, new graduates, or maybe probably your undergrad. Yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm so excited to see you all. So my name is Ademide Mabadije, but I go by Mide. So my undergrad was in petroleum engineering at the University of Lagos in Nigeria, after which I worked for 2 years and then in the oil and gas industry, and then 1 year as an assistant lecturer in the geology department at university in my country before coming to the United States for my master's at the University of Oklahoma, where I studied natural gas engineering and management. And it was thesis based. So I did a lot of research with papers, kind of had to figure out how to work under pressure and then write, which is why we're here today. And after graduating from that, I moved on to my PhD, where I'm currently at the moment, trying to graduate in December. So this is a timely meeting to have because I am in the process of writing my dissertation as well. And trying to wrap up my master's report so concurrently at the same time. So that's a bit of background for me, just in the oil and gas industry, making things work. And I'm nice to hear. That'll be all.
All right, thank you very much. And well, listening to your background, one thing that I realized that, we are all from different countries and we've been here in the US. And yeah, so my first question, which is to each and everyone, to all the panelists. So how different is the thesis writing in your home country as compared to what is over here in the US? So anyone who wants to tackle that can have a go at it. How different is let's say writing your thesis in your home country, let's say in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Pakistan, and as compared to here in the US? Are they different or kind of similar, or about the same structure or something like that?
I can go first. For me, I think the structure was same, but the data collection process and all of that, because it has less scrutinizing, I would say. So there's no IRB and all that stuff. So that creates a different dynamics for data collection and writing. But I think by structure, with just writing the thesis, the chapters and everything, it's similar. There's not much difference. Another thing, I think professors here are more supportive and help you, guide you to every step. In my home country, I think like my department, maybe it could be different in different departments, but my department was like, figure it out. They're not really gonna help you. They're just gonna tell you what's the mistakes.
All right. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Yes. Does anyone want to give another submission or something like that?
Yeah, I think for me, similar to what Rafia said, I think the structure is the same. I think here you have access to like more journals and articles to cite. And so I remember like when we were doing our thesis in Ghana, like nobody really cared if we were citing something that was 30 years old. But then here you have access to like literature, papers that are published today, you can see it. You can see papers that were published yesterday. So like you have to like make sure that you are using like more recent literature. So I think that, and I think like for undergrad in Ghana, because it's like you have to graduate in 4 years and you have to do your thesis in 4th year and graduate. It's like automatically everybody is trying to graduate. But here it's 2 years. Well, if you decide to do your master's for 5 years, who cares? Like there'll be no funding for you. So like you have to be willing to push yourself to get it done. If you decide that you're gonna like wait and wait and wait and nobody, I mean, your advisor cannot force you. All the department can say is that, well, if you are funding you, we don't have funding for you anymore. So I think there is that aspect of like, oh, we are all graduating in June and we are all getting ready. And then here it's like, you can decide to graduate in December. You can decide to, whenever you want to graduate, nobody really cares. I think that's one difference that I forget.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Usua.
I think for me, my experience is a tad bit different. In undergrad, when I needed to write my thesis, it was an individually based thesis, more like capstone here that undergrads have, but you have to write a publication out of it. I was in the School of Engineering and I studied petroleum engineering. So the department rather, had affiliations with the Society of Petroleum Engineers, geophysicists, geologists. So we had student societal memberships that gave us access into their database so we could use their journals to like, read and write our thesis. So at that point in time, it was dependent on how far you wanted to go. If you were working with a full professor, they will push you all the way. If you're working with an assistant lecturer, they'll kind of like be like, okay, anything goes, anything goes. I think I was working with someone that just finished his PhD. So he was pretty much, aligned with how things were done abroad because he just came back. So that was pretty different for me. I would say it was kind of similar in a way, structure-wise, but the materials were available. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, so the next question that I want us to discuss will be, what should one know about writing a graduate thesis, school thesis? So what should one know? For instance, let's say time requirement. I learned probably, different schools might have, different formatting styles. Some people use, encourage the use of LaTeX, or maybe other schools will also encourage using just the normal Word documents. Yeah, so, Rafia, can you start for us? What should one know about writing graduate school thesis? What should one know about it?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is download the handbook for writing graduate thesis that every school has and follow up. The first thing I do normally is, even for article writing, is I download what they want as basic formatting requirements. And so I have those down, and so it's easy for me. So like if they want 1-inch margins on the right and left, but like 3-inch margins on top and bottoms. So things like those. What writing font do they want? What size of headings and what style of font do they want? All of those things. And I would suggest use the Word has those formatting, heading, different things. So use that because that goes into your table of contents pretty easy. So when you have to create those, that'll be like, wait, you don't have to like go and look for page numbers every time. So those are basic things I would say. And then every one of these graduate documents have the details, what chapters do they want, or your department might have something where what chapters there need to be, what would be the length of the chapters that they want, and things like that. So follow those requirements from the start, rather than you decide, oh, I'll just write and then decide I'll edit these later. Editing while you're doing it is way easier than leaving it to the end. So that is something I would say for thesis writing that you need to focus on.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I can go next.
Okay.
I think one of the struggles for most students, and even myself when I was a student, it's also like figuring out exactly what you want to do. Like, what do you want to write about? I think that is like a much bigger question, and like how do you even get to the point of knowing exactly what you want to do? And for me, I think there are like so many ways. I mean, there are people who are passionate about something, they've been passionate about it for so many years, and they just want to research that. You may not probably be that person. You don't really have anything that you're passionate. You just want to graduate, and you're wondering like, what do I do? I do feel like if you have passion about something, great. If not, I feel like here in the US, the graduate programs are set up in a way that even before you do your thesis, you will write something, right? You have like a class project, you have something that you need to write. So sometimes some of those things that you did could like spark some interest. Maybe like you had to write a paper, end of term paper on something, and then after you wrote it, you're like, oh, this could be an interesting thing. Can I like research that? So that could be something that how you figure out like exactly what you want to do. You could also be like a graduate assistant working with a faculty on their projects, and you're like, okay, this is something that I can use part of. Of course, you cannot do the entire project as your thesis for your master's. You just want to do something that you want to finish. One Ghanaian professor in Western Michigan once told me, she's like, once you graduate, you can do anything that you want to do. Now you just want to do something that you can finish and go. This is not a time that you're going to write a 1,000-page book, right? You just want to do a research that has like a question that you're trying to address and something that you can find data. I know like some of us are like so bent on like doing something in Ghana or doing something in your home country is great, but sometimes depending on what you're doing, it's not realistic. You know, you might not have a faculty in your department who is interested to advise you on something in your home country. So I think those are things that like you're figuring like, what exactly do I want to do? And I think the earlier you start thinking about those things, the better, rather than waiting till like the semester that you are registering for thesis credit hours. You're like, okay, now I'm registered. What am I doing? And like I said, the way the programs are set up, if you know what you're doing earlier, you're going to take research methods. You're going to do a project for that. So if you know what you're doing, you can even be writing your methods in that class. By the time you get to actually doing your thesis, you have your methodology. You did a literature review that you use for a different like coursework that is related, and you just put them together and you continue from there. So I think for me, it's like, think, what do I want to do? And trying to figure out like what kind of help is available, who is doing something that I'm interested in, and how do I use the resources that I have available. I think that's, for me, that's like one of the first things to figure out.
Thank you very much, Dr. Owusu. Yeah, so but do you, Miss Mendeley, right? Yeah, do you want to add anything?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay,
Just
sure.
on what the two panelists have talked about. It would also be nice for you to find out what exactly your graduate advisor's preference is. Because for instance, for example, when I was doing my first master's, my graduate advisor was like, oh, follow the graduate school template. And then when I'm writing my PhD certificate now, he's like, no, write it as a paper-based approach. So 4 chapters, 4 individual papers, write a generalized conclusion, write a generalized introduction. So basically what you're doing is like a stitch and fix of all what you've written so far. So find that out, because usually there are things like that and they will have talked to the graduate school about it. It might not be in the handbook, so to say. Also regarding style guide, personally, I don't, even though there's like for thesis writing and all, sometimes your school might have a latex option. And if they have a latex option, that means it can be imported into like a reference manager. So as opposed to you going in line by line to see if your headers are following the same format, just import it into like, say, for instance, Mendeley, and just write out using that template. So it would automatically adjust it for you as you go in Microsoft Word. So I think that's about it. I think the other two panelists basically covered it all.
Yeah, thank you very much for your submissions. Yeah, I realized that, I mean, what Dr. Owusu, said that certain courses you can take, and it actually helps you in writing your thesis if you know what you're going about. I do remember, I think last semester, I took a certain course, scientific research. Are we all good?
So I had another point with Usua. What she was saying was like knowing what you're gonna do. I would suggest like another thing is like when you're doing your assignments for different courses before your thesis, maybe focus them towards different parts of your thesis. So maybe one of the assignments that like try doing one of those assignments on like the topic you really want to work. So you would know whether you can find data, whether you're really into it, all of those things. So try in those assignments. And if one of them works well, for my last thesis, that's what happened. Like one of them really worked out. So I converted it into my thesis for my master's. So that is very helpful in that regard, using those assignments. And one of them can built into your thesis.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes. So our next question for discussion is going to be, are there any effective ways in writing it? And if there are, what are those? Yeah, so are there any effective ways in writing your thesis? And if there are some ways, effective ways of going about your thesis, then what are those? There are probably some people may start and get to a certain portion and they realize that probably, I mean, it's no good. Maybe they hand over to their supervisor and they're like, what have you done? I mean, you have to go back to the introduction session or something like that. And you see that you've wasted so much time that you're not going to get it back. So are there any effective ways of going about, I mean, writing your thesis? Yeah.
Yeah, I could jump in on this. So you know how everyone thinks it follows accordingly from abstracts, introduction, literature review, methodology, results and discussion, and then conclusions. You know, people most times think you have to write it sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. So the trick, at least for me, what works is I start off first with my results. The results I have from my data. What results do I have? I write my results and discussion first. Then back calculate on how I got the results and discussion, write out a full-fledged methodology, looking at each of those lines, of course I code a lot, looking at each of those lines of codes and mathematical formulation. From there, I'm like, okay, now let's get to the introduction. I write the introduction, I know what my motivation is, my objective, my hypothesis. I know what the roadmap for the work is, I write that up, looking at literature as well. And then when I'm trying to write the whole literature review, I have to go to like Web of Science and then type in the topic and look at the history. Then you could draw, I don't know how your library works, but here at UT Austin, they could help you figure out a map of that topic. So you could see different authors in response to like hotspots, people that have really well-cited papers, and then you could start from there. So that would help you build the literature down into as far as you want to go. Then the last thing you go to is the conclusion. And when you're done, there's like a 7-question step approach that they give everyone in at least my research group on how to write an abstract. So as you're answering those questions, it might seem like an annoying homework, but what you're doing is you're indirectly writing your abstract. And that's the last thing you do, write your abstract. So that's how it kind of works for me.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, so I would say it's probably depends on what field and what you're doing, right? If you're doing qualitative research, you cannot write your results because you don't have questionnaire, you don't have anything. You pretty much cannot start from there. So I think figuring like what you're doing. So I mean, with my like PhD dissertation, I basically use secondary data. So right when you're going from secondary data, you can always like run some analysis and see like, does this make sense? Is there anything here that seems like a catch that I can like, is there something in there? Then you can start from. But if you're doing qualitative, like my master's thesis, I did qualitative, I did surveys and like some brief interviews. When you're doing primary data collection, you really have to know what you're doing because you don't want to waste so much time collecting data that you don't know what you're using it for. And I think ethically, it's also not right to waste people's time when you know you're not going to use that data. So for me, I think ideally you would want to know the literature about what you're doing. Like, what are people doing in this area? What are they saying? What is left that is not being done, right? So figuring that out, like, is there a gap that you're trying to fill? You don't want to like spend time doing something that has been done over and over again and you're not contributing, right? Every dissertation that you write, they ask you like, what is your contribution? If you can't think about one or two contributions that are unique to your work, then you probably shouldn't be wasting 2, 3, 4, 5 years doing that. So I think, you know, as you are taking classes and you are like writing papers and you're reading, figuring out where is the gap, where there is gap in this area that I'm interested in. And then once you identify a gap, by the time you identify the gap, you already have like the literature that you need, right? You don't even have to write it. I know people who use like Zotero and they like save all their, how do you call it, all their papers in a folder. I've even seen somebody who quotes their like articles in NVivo. So like they provide like a summary of each of the papers, and it's like once they know, okay, this paper says that this is what this paper addressed. This is we actually in my center, like when we write a paper, we always have a spreadsheet. We have like the journal, like the authors, the title of the paper, what research question were they addressing, what was the methods that they used, what did they find, what is the like in the most papers, like at the end they will say like here are some things that needs to be addressed. So I feel like if you are able, if you have an idea of what you want to do and you are able to at least like look at what is available, you may like identify some gap and then you can go from there. Like I said, depending if you're doing qualitative, you definitely need to know where you're going before you even get out to collect data. I think the other thing, when you're asking the question, you're like, oh, you spend all this time writing and it's not relevant. I know some of us from where we are coming from, meeting your advisor every week, it's like, that is so weird. I don't want to see my professor all the time. But when you're writing a thesis and a dissertation, the best you can do is to let them see what you're writing as soon as possible. Don't wait till the end of semester and send them 5 chapters and be like, here is it. So the more you meet them, the more they see what you're doing, the more they can correct you sooner than later, right? You don't want to waste your time writing and writing, thinking you know it all. You know, so I think, yeah, outside of like, you know, the literature, I think the other thing that even if you don't know what you're doing, for me, I feel like just setting a meeting with advice that I'm going to meet you every other week, that even gets you to do something. And that gets you like to talk about your work. One thing that about research is that the more you talk about it, the better it gets, because the more you are able to explain it, you know, at the beginning you struggle to explain it, but then as you go, you realize that now I'm so comfortable, I can easily use like 3 words to explain to somebody what I'm doing. So you know, making sure that you're meeting your advisor as often as you can, sending them things more regularly, if it's just 1 page, even if it's a paragraph. It's like, oh, here's the research question that I've been thinking about, and let them give you feedback before you dive in, like doing stuff that you don't have to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usua, for your submission. Orphea, do you have any?
I would actually piggyback on both of them. So yes, the citation machines, any of those like Zotero, Mendeley, EndNote, all of those are very helpful. So when you're doing reading things in your classes, I would suggest start doing that in Zotero or whatever you use, whatever works for you. For me, Mendeley and EndNote never worked. Zotero was something I really loved and I used that. So it all depends on which one works for you. So you might have to try all those and then see which one is best for you. Those are very helpful because you have the list, and when you start writing your thesis and literature review, you can just like grasp things from there. One thing that I recently learned was one of my professors used text maps for literature review. What she wants us to do is whatever article, book, whatever thing we read, she makes us like rather than an Excel sheet, it was a Word document where you'll have the title, you'll have the citation, so whatever citation format you use in your industry, in your field. The research thesis of that book or that article, and then having the data and methods section briefly discuss like 4 to 5 lines. What statistical method did they use, or what qualitative method did they use? What was the data? And then having those useful theories that they use. So those are helpful because it's like a literature review, you know, like what has been happening in the previous things. So those are some things that are very helpful and that have really helped me out on. And yes, I tried doing it on Unvivo, like our last panelist talked about. It doesn't really work out for me, the Unvivo thing. I use OneNote for that, and I can like search in a word on OneNote, and then that will bring in all the articles or whatever summaries I've written. That is very helpful for me, so I can like collect, okay, these 5 articles talked about this, so I can reference them in my stuff. So those are a few things that I would suggest for writing pieces. There are a few more, and now I've forgotten. Can you repeat your question one more time? That'll remind me.
Oh, well, I mean, so it was just about the effective ways of how to write, I mean, our thesis, to go about the thesis, yeah. But I mean, the submission that you already gave was was great. Yes, was very great.
Yeah, one more thing that I wanted to add was what Midi was talking about, like which section is something that you start with. For me, it's always methodology. Even, yes, if I'm using a secondary data, it is usually a test, like, okay, whether this works out or not. But the first thing I write is method section, and then move on. So it all depends, again, on you. I would say whichever section you think is easy for you and you can easily work on, without even like giving it a like time, like, okay, I have to make it perfect and this needs to be done, or whatever section you're more comfortable with. Start with that. Plus, one thing that I learned from one of my classmates was like, she would write stuff in like really easy language, like the way I'm talking to you. She'll just type those things up and whatever is in her brain, and then later go back and make it more sophisticated for thesis or research paper or whatever. But that way the flow of thought goes on the paper, and then it makes it easy to write it down in more academic manner.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Rafia. So let's go back to Miss Mendeley. It seems she still has some suggestions or some submissions. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So it was about, I realized like I didn't address the time components of the question, right? So I know that for some people, it might be like something they start off writing their thesis from the get-go because when they came on in, they had a grant or they had a proposal that was brought in, which is more common in the engineering, statistics, computer science field. You know what you're going to work on when you start. There's a gap that you're coming to fill, and you have to fill it before you graduate, right? So sometimes you might just have that writer's block on when you're trying to say, write a paragraph. You could spend a week trying to write a paragraph, I kid you not. And sometimes you just have no motivation. Like, I really know I need to write this chapter, but this week doesn't feel like it. And a week becomes a month, not because you're procrastinating, but because it's just not working. So there are resources at the right. I don't know, every university here in the States, I think, has a writing center that you could use. So you could join like online writing groups affiliated with other graduate students in the university. And it's like you dedicate a time block, whether it's 1 hour every week or 2 hours every week, to write something in lieu to what you're working on. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you're just doing that consistently. And then you're able to get like feedback from the writing assessors. So that way they can look at the flow for you. And there'll be a portal, at least I know OU and UT Austin have that. There'll be a portal where when you submit it, they could also CC your advisor and need to look at your progress if you want. So that way it helps manage that, you know, back and forth with advisor, and then the grammar check, is there flow? Is it something, how deep do you want to go? Do you want to write like a completely scientific thesis, or do you want to write a thesis that if somebody else picks it up, even though it is scientific, they can also understand it? So that resource is just out there. Just wanted to put it out.
All right. Thank you very much for the submission. Blessed, do you have something to say?
Yes, I have a question. Can I ask it, or I can only ask?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay.
I mean, you can.
So thank you all for your submission so far. I'm in the process of writing my thesis, so this program is very important for me. So my question is with respect to organization. I think Rafia touched on it a little bit using EndNote, but to the rest of our panelists, can you throw some light on as to how to organize organization of writing a thesis, especially when it comes to referencing? Do I have to create a folder for each of the major sections within the thesis and keep all the papers in there and then reference later? Or what do you suggest when it comes to organizing myself, referencing, and for other aspects of the thesis?
Honestly, I will suggest, like, I am biased. I always use Mendeley, and I love using Mendeley because if the PDF version of the paper or whatever publication or even document you're trying to read is available online, it will be linked to it and it will store it in Mendeley. And as you're reading, it pops up like you're reading it in Adobe. So you could highlight the important parts. There's also like a note section. So you could do that for each of the papers. So for instance, if you're working on introduction and introduction is something general, you could have all the generalized papers in there, have your summary as well in the notes as you read, as you go through your research journey. So when you're trying to write your dissertation, you already have a summary of each of those papers. You already know the highlighted points. You've made some sort of let's say a paragraph worth of something that would always remind you what you gained from the paper. So you don't have to reread those papers over and over again because you've already put in the work at some particular time in the past. So that's what I usually do. And if it's and that will keep building because you would realize, like, when you partition things, like I don't know how it works in like humanities and all, but for engineering, when you have one project, let's say for instance something that has to do with dimensionality reduction, you open up a project in Mendeley, and then every other resource could be a subfolder as well. So how deep you go, you could partition as well. So that helps keep the structure, and you could track things and know how to move around. At least that's what I do. So yeah.
All right.
Almost all these softwares, Mendeley, Zotero, EndNote does that. I haven't used EndNote in a very long time, but Zotero does the same thing where you can highlight your PDFs. It gets attached by itself, and then you can have like notes on it, comments on it, highlight whatever on it, and it'll be stored in it. So the organization is very easy.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rafia. Dr. Uso, do you have any submission?
Sure. I mean, I could, if you guys, I could share my screen and show it if you want to see it. But I use Zotero. You can install Zotero on your computer, and then you can also install the add-on, the plugin for Microsoft Word. If you do it, Zotero will appear on your Microsoft Word that you're working in. And because it's connected, when you're writing something and you want to like cite it, you just go to like the Zotero tab on your Microsoft Word, and then you type in like whichever author that you're trying to. So let's say like I'm writing something and it's like, oh, maybe food insecurity in the US is 12% in 2022. If I write that statement and I know what article is from, I can immediately go click on the Zotero thing on my menu bar or whatever, and then insert the citation. And then if I know that maybe it's like Blizzard wrote the paper, I just type, even if I type the title of the paper or I type Blizzard's name, that paper will come up and you just select it, and that's how you cite. It's really, I think before like coming to the US, I hadn't used it. It sounds very scary when people are explaining it to you. It's like, how do all these things like get to talk? But it's really very straightforward once like you are able to figure it out. And of course, there's YouTube videos and stuff on like everything. Now you can do it yourself, learn on your own and figure it out. But yeah, it's not as complicated as it sounds sometimes. It's much easier than writing and going back, and like sometimes we write and in those days, you go back to Google and copy and paste it in there. It's like, where's the paper that I found this in? And you can spend days trying to find all the papers that you cited in a 3-page paper. So yeah, it helps to like, once you have that, it helps.
And please, can you share your screen?
Sure.
Yes,
I
thank you.
think you have the name. Okay. Okay, so let me share the entire screen. Okay. So here's my Zotero, right? Once you have like the plugin, I have this. Okay, so this is the app that I have installed on my computer. I don't know if you can see it with all the papers in there. And for every paper, you have like the title of the paper, the author. If you click on like, let's see, if I click on this paper, like you see, it has like this is the article. There is the information about like who wrote the paper. So here there's the creator, the date that I added it. There's the year, everything is in there. How you get here, trying to find something too. So if you have like Zotero installed on your thing, and let's say you find a paper, what paper am I looking for? Okay. Let's say food insecurity. Once you have it installed, anytime you open it, sometimes even it will be an article that you don't have access to. So you can't even download it, but you can save it in Zotero. So over here, yeah, usually you have like the tab here that will save it in Zotero for you. And once it's saved in there, it goes into that folder that I showed you. So it's here. So let's say right now, this is my Word document. I'm trying to write something and I type in something and I want to cite. I have Zotero here. You say add citation. Sometimes it'll give you the option to select like which style of citation you want to use. So let's say I want to use APA. I click OK. Let's see. Where do I go? Okay. So once you do like citations, this thing will pop up. So let's say I have a paper on food security, that's what I'm looking. So these are all the papers I have in my Zotero that have food security as a title, right? So let's say I'm trying to cite this one. I can click on it. Where is it then? Yeah, you click on it and click enter. So it's here. Now this is the in-text. When you finish your thing and you're doing like your list of references, you go to Zotero again, you say add bibliography. And then everybody that you cited in that paper will just pop up and create a list for you. So install Zotero on your computer, install the plugin on your Chrome or whatever you're using, install the plugin on your Word document, and I think you log in or something and you're good. Once you save it in there, even if there is a paper that you cannot find, there is a way to go into Zotero and just add like an item. So maybe a book, you don't have access to the book, you can go create one item, select it's a book, here's the author, here's the year. You can also manually add those into Zotero if there's like something like that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wusu, for your submission and also a little bit of tutorials on that. Yes, it was very, very insightful. Yeah. Blessed, do you still have any other question?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Blessed. Yeah. So our next question is going to be about that. So what additional resources? I think your previous submissions, all that you did mention, Doreen. Okay, before I ask the question, Doreen, do you have any question?
Yes, so
All right.
thank you, panelists, for the submissions. They've been very informative so far. I want to know if Zotero also arranges in alphabetical order the references at the bibliography. Okay. And also, I don't know if you'll be treating that later in your talk, but I want to know if it's okay to add publications in your thesis, or should it be only all the stuff that you did after publishing? Because I know some of the journals have an issue with that, or they had an issue with that, but I don't know if you need to include like publications as part of your thesis, or should it be only the stuff you did after those publications that you need to submit?
Thank you very much, Doreen, for your questions. Yes, so
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by publications or after publications?
Okay, so I know that in writing thesis, I don't know for master's thesis, but I've heard with PhD thesis, at a point, some of the journals, I mean, they've said already you published whatever it is, so the including it in a PhD publication, even though the PhD thesis is like not a published something, but some of them had an issue with that. At least my professor was talking about this some time ago. So, but then she now thinks it's okay. I mean, people do it, so it's fine. But I'm just asking if from your end, it's okay to add like any publications you've ever done throughout a PhD in your thesis, or must the thesis be just the stuff you did, like all the other stuff that, or maybe the other projects that are yet to be published that you only need to include in your thesis? I don't know if it's clear now.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the university. Like where I work now at Case Western, they have a requirement that you have to publish a certain amount of papers before you graduate, right? So once you get into a PhD program at Case, you have to publish maybe 3 papers. So you are working towards publishing those 3 papers. If you publish a paper in your master's program, it doesn't count. If you decide to publish your master's thesis whilst you're doing your PhD, that doesn't count. It's all the work that you are doing in that program. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I want to know if you need to include that project, because people take on several projects throughout their PhD. Some get published along the way, some like latter part of their stuff. So I don't know if you need to include those publications, or maybe I'm not making this like straight sense or something.
Okay, well, maybe probably I do get you. I think I was having a conversation with my supervisor on that sometimes when you're working on your research, you get certain parts or all of it, published. Yeah, and when you publish the paper, it's kind of now belongs to you where you publish it. So let's say energies, or let's say science. Yeah, the journal that it belongs to them. But I think he told me that it's still okay. They now do accept that though you've published it, you can still write that in your thesis. And maybe, I don't know, it could also depend on the school. Yeah, it could also depend on the school. But I think here in New Mexico Tech, you can publish a paper and add that to your thesis. Yes, and you just have to let them know that you've published this part or you've published that. Yes.
Okay. Because I know it's allowed to cite the paper, but I didn't know you could include every other thing in the paper in your thesis. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I don't know if any other person can add.
I can add to that because that's what I'm currently doing. So I literally just added all my papers into my dissertation. But then remember, like when you're writing papers, the introduction is really brief. So now you need to like expand it some more and add some more.
Okay.
You can definitely lift into it. They do.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, for me, my last chapter will probably not have been published before I leave. So what I'm trying to do is write a somewhat concise version that wouldn't coincide with the one I'm trying to publish. So I don't have to do double the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel Furry, do you have any question or okay, thank you very much. Yes, so Doreen, your hands is still raised.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so our next question that we're going to discuss about is going to be kind of similar to what our previous discussion. Yeah, so what other resources apart from citing, you've mentioned of EndNote, Mendeley, and a whole lot. So what other resources can help us to effectively write our thesis? Yeah, are there any other resources apart from the referencing tools that we've already talked about? Are there any other resources? So maybe Grammarly to help with, not everyone, their primary language is English, and sometimes it becomes so difficult and challenging when you want to make sense of a certain statement or something like that. Yeah, so are there any other resources that can help us shape our writing to make it effective?
I think one of the other panelists talked about the Writing Center at your university, so making use of that. I think
Oh.
also like if you're like in a cohort with some other like graduate students, like tagging, like team tagging, reading somebody's paper for them, having the other person also read yours for you, because I think you also learn from reading how other people write. So definitely not acting like you're an island and you are in your own corner writing your own thesis. I think it helps to get feedback from your peers and people that you probably feel like you can write better than them, but I do feel like everybody has a way of helping you in what you're writing. So making use of the people in your circle, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Does anyone has any other submission?
So I would say yes, like taking to a writing center or like discussing with your friends, like exchanging within your field with your friends or anyone, that is helpful. Another thing other than Grammarly and what I said about Word to use those headings and stuff, the formatting styles. I feel like one other thing that I use sometimes is when I couldn't figure out how to write something specific, like a methodology that I've never done before, but I don't know like how to write it. I go and look for the article that used it and wrote about it and pretty much use the same wordings using my own data. So that helps, like you're replicating the language, but that teaches you how to write that. So that is something I usually do with some articles or even pieces. Like, okay, how did that person write it? And I'll just copy paste exact their sentences into mine and then switch it to my own data. And once I've written that, if I feel like it's plagiarized, I'll like rewrite it, but that gives me an idea how to write that thing.
Thank you.
Okay. What Rafia just said, you could so I'm a strong believer of if you understand your research, you can explain it to somebody else. So basically what I do is I try to explain what I'm trying to write. For instance, my introduction, I know what goes into it. And then I find somebody to explain it to, and then I record myself. When I record myself, I use this voice to text app. And then I get it as a text. When I get it as a text, I look through it, like, does it properly convey what I want? That's like the first draft, right? I go in, edit it for flow, transition, and consistency. Obviously, it's not plagiarized because it came out from my mind, right? And then I take it into Quillbot, another online platform / tool. And then it paraphrases it in such a way that it's concise. It asks me if I want to make my wording more scientific, more relational, or if I want it to just be more fluent. So you could do that to fix, to help you write as you go. Those are just like tricks I picked up along the way.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, so the Quillbot is a paraphrasing tool. So I mean, it helps in paraphrasing and I mean, also to minimize your plagiarism. Yeah, and I think you also did mention of Grammarly. You guys did mention of the Grammarly. I mean, also helps with your sentence construction. And if you are a premium subscriber, it can also help you with plagiarism check. Yeah, so yeah, and one thing that the panelists did mention that I mean really caught my attention was you reading other papers, right? And following the structure, how they wrote. It's also very keen. I mean, some people start and read papers just for the knowledge, but not the structure. I mean, it's also another skill that I will entreat all of us to, I mean, take note of it when we are reading other papers. Yeah. All right. So if there are no questions, then we're gonna move on to our next question, which we're gonna discuss about. So in planning to, okay, Blessed, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. So I believe motivation is a very important thing when it comes to writing thesis. So in your experience, do we just drag ourselves into the thesis writing, or are there things we can do to ensure we are always motivated to stay on track and finish on time?
I could go first.
All right.
Motivation is needed, yes. And sometimes you just don't find that motivation motivation, right? So for me, I think the first thing you need to do is figure out when you're optimal, like when is the best time for you to work. For me, if I need to write something new or do something completely new that I've never done before, the mornings are fine. If it's something I'm familiar with, I'm going to finesse it and work in the night. The afternoon is where I'm probably like just a little bit hazy and wish like it didn't exist. So I usually like go for a run. And then when I come back, like my mind is clear. And when my mind is clear, I'm like, okay, I feel like, okay, let me get writing. And then I start writing. However, sometimes I don't feel like writing even after I come back for a run. And that's okay too. I just do whatever else I need to do, because there will be a time where all you want to do is write. Like for an example, in November, even though I was taking classes, all I wanted to do was write. And then I had to speak with the professors, like we're teaching the class, like right now, all my brain is focused on is writing, and this is all I can do. Is there a way that all the homeworks due this November, I could submit it in December, or just do like some extra credits towards the end of the semester? Like, and they'll usually be very understanding of your plight, right? Because they've all been there, right? They know how hard writing can be, and they know that sometimes when you're on the road, you just have to keep it going so that you can maximize it and get the most out of it. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you. Are there any other submissions?
Yeah, I would say, in addition to what she said, one of the things that my PhD advisor always said to me was that don't go too long without looking at your work. Even if it's a table that you're going to create, even if it's like editing, you know, you can't write, but you can create a table. You can write, but you can like center the titles and change the font style, right? Whatever will take you into the paper that you're writing, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Just don't go too long, because the longer you stay away from it, the harder it becomes. Trust me, I had a baby during my PhD, and it's like, when you take too much time away from it, it's like now you have to go back and like reread and figure out like, where were you when you left and what's next? Like, where are you going with what you're doing? You may even think, maybe I need to change this whole thing, because now I don't know even if I really want to do this anymore, because I've been away from it so long. I've seen different things. I probably have a different interest. So like making sure that you are like consistently like going back to it. Like I said, for me, I like it when I have a deadline. So like, you know, always like I will provide the deadline. Like, okay, I will send you my chapter 1, the draft, maybe next 2 weeks. I will set a date, and I wouldn't want to disappoint the person. So even if I don't do it the night before, I will do something. So setting some deadlines and making sure that you are sharing the deadline with your advisor. So it's not like you are just the only person who knows the deadline. And so it doesn't matter whether you meet it or not. And then like if your advisor, depending on who you work with, some people are more available, some people are not. If you have somebody who is more available and is willing to meet with you, like getting something, even if it's once a month, you know, like you are now starting out. So okay, once a month I'll meet you. Once every other week. You would definitely want to do something before you go meet this person. So that alone in itself will give you like, make you accountable, right? And of course, your mental health is important. If you have to find something that like, you know, gives you joy, it gives you time away from all the writing, you know, you feel like, okay, like the other panelist that she runs, if you're somebody who likes to watch movie, you know, get time for yourself and watch that movie. And when you finish, go and write. If it's ice cream that you want to eat, you know, if you're somebody who just likes to go for shopping, like build that in your schedule, because you want to finish this, but you want to finish as a healthy person, somebody who is, you know, in good condition. So, you know, making sure you're taking care of yourself and also building in those things so you are able to get the work done and also be in good health, because that is very, very important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usua. And I mean, what you said about you shouldn't go very long without looking at, I mean, what you're writing. I mean, I have an experience with that, that it took a while and I wanted to get back, and I've even forgotten how I titled, I mean, the thesis, how I'm writing it. And I was searching it and I cannot even find it. Like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, I just cannot remember like where I saved it and how I even saved it. to actually retrieve it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that submission. Yeah. Rafia, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I have a few things. So one, what I do usually is, yes, giving myself deadlines, and sometimes like not just that, but I have a whiteboard right in front of me in my like right next to my computer where I write what I need to do. So I update it, and that feeling of crossing it out is the best feeling ever. So that keeps me going. Okay, I have to do this. I need to get this done. Having deadlines on there. All those things always help me out, motivating me. Okay, I need to get this done. Secondly, if you like, she said, like, if you can't write, maybe make a table. Or like I said before, or Midi said it, one of the things, speech to type, like just speak it out loud and it'll type it for you. You will have something there. You're not like keeping yourself awake. And sometimes like thinking about it and just saying it out loud makes you motivated. Okay, let me clear this out, make it pretty and more academic. Or like just using the easy language of typing. For me, I think speech to text has always helped, because even if I don't feel like writing, once I like speak and it starts typing on the word, after I'm like, okay, I think I can edit this. There's something on the page. It's not empty anymore. So that really helps. One of my advisors always tells me, even thinking counts as working towards your thesis. So you're doing dishes, you're going for a run, you're taking a shower, but you're thinking about your thesis, how you're going to do things also counts because you're working on it. So sometimes decluttering around your apartment and your house helps you motivate towards your thesis and work towards it. Okay, where am I stuck? And while I'm doing dishes, I can keep on thinking about it. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I can try this. And I've done that with coding as well. So I do a lot of coding, and I'll be doing my dishes and thinking, okay, this code is not working. What can I do? And then something will come up, and I'll be like, okay, let me get to the computer and try this. And sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. But that's something that helps you do it. So yeah, these are a few tips that I use to get myself motivated to work.
Thank you very much for your submission. Dr. Usua, do you have any other suggestions? And
yeah, I wanted to add that, like, especially for those of us in the behavioral, social and behavioral sciences, sometimes it's not like you don't know the methods. It's like you don't even know the system. You don't know, like you're doing a research about US states. You don't even know the states. You don't know the names of the state. You're doing a research about counties. You don't even know how counties came to be. You don't know, like, it doesn't even make sense to you, right? You know the methods, you know your thing, you know, you're a straight A student. It's not like you're a student who doesn't know anything. So I think for those things, you really need to spend time to understand the system, right? If you're doing something about SNAP benefits, you have no idea what SNAP is, food stamp. You have no idea. You don't know how to qualify for SNAP, but you have an interest in it. You really need to spend time outside of like all that we are talking about to really like understand what is this, right? You did not grow up here. You probably haven't heard of it until now, but you want to do some work in it. So I think those things can also like become a challenge at some point. It's like, I'm trying to talk about this thing. I really have the passion for it. I know the method I'm using, but it's like, anytime somebody asks me a question about WIC, it's like, what is, like, I know what is it, but I don't know how it works. And I don't know how to explain it. Like, how can I explain that to somebody who is from here and understand that system? So I think, you know, it can be very challenging trying to do something in a system that you have no idea how it operates. So that could also sometimes make you feel less motivated. It's like, I'm trying, but then the more I read, it's like I'm always finding something new about this whole process that I don't even know, right? How do I like navigate that? So, you know, once you figure out what you want to do, it will be important to spend time to understand like the history of it, like how did it come to be? So that when you're talking about it, you're confident when you present about it. It's not that, oh, I mean, I know the methods, I'm a qualitative thing, but I don't really know how this thing works in the US, but I'm trying to do a research in it. So figuring that out can be helpful too.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usua, for your submission. Blessed, did you have any other question?
Yes, but I'll ask it later. Go ahead. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, hearing Dr. Usua just recent submission, I just remembered, I had interest in machine learning. I'm actually a petroleum student, and well, with the course structure, there isn't, let's say, a machine learning course in it that you kind of actually, learn. But I wanted to use machine learning to, implement that in the petroleum engineering. And yeah, I wanted to use that as my research, my thesis, but I didn't know where to start from. I had little knowledge in that. And I tried, machine learning is actually broad, and I tried what I knew, it didn't work. I was having poor predictions and all of that. And I kept on searching, but maybe probably because I didn't have much knowledge in it, I didn't know what keywords to actually search on. So I was kind of searching abysmally. Getting so much results, reading it, but to no avail. Until I think SPE, we have on petroleum, we have this organization, SPE, and sometimes they hold distinguished lectures. So I attended one, and it was about machine learning. What the person talked about, I realized that now mine is kind of different, but I was like, no, let me still ask that person since he has some knowledge in machine learning. And he gave a certain suggestion and told me that, now this type of machine learning, I should look into that. So I got a certain keyword, I searched into it, and now it makes sense. The resources that I was getting made sense and actually helped me. So yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Usua, and the other panelists. I think in summary of all that they've said, we have to keep on doing something, right? Yeah, if we are not writing, we have to be speaking. Yeah, if not speaking, we have to be editing. The tables. If we are tired, we have to go on a walk, you see. So we don't have to stop doing anything. We have to do something. Yes, thank you very much for your submissions. And to our next question, which you are going to discuss on, and I think this is also very, very relevant. So in planning to graduate from graduate schools, what are the key items that a student has to consider, right? So when we're about to, most of the times when we're coming over, we have 4 years visa, 5 years visa, and all of that. And we think that we can still live here, finish our master's and still live here for about 5 years. Exhaust all of it. Right, but I think that's not the case. So when we're about to graduate, what are some of the key items that a student has to consider, right? For instance, maybe restarting a career or something like that. So when we're about to graduate, what are some of the thoughts that we should have, or what are some of the plans that we should have in place that we don't graduate and we feel stranded? Yes, so that's the question. And any one of the panelists can go first. Yeah.
Okay, I could go.
All right.
So for me, it's always been to identify 3 goal types. So the first goal is, what are my long-term goals? 10, 15 years down the line, what do I think I want to be? Like, what should I be doing, right? For me, it would be like, okay, 10, 15 years down the line, I'm leaving the oil and gas industry and going back into academia. That's my long-term goal career-wise, right? And then I'm like, what's my ideal goal? My ideal goal is, let's say Chevron just picks me up and says, I'm the best thing that happens since sliced bread. I should come work for them. That's my ideal goal. The more realistic goal will be, how do I merge my ideal goal to my long-term goal? And I do that by saying, okay, I apply to all these companies for jobs. Okay, maybe Chevron isn't working. How about all those mid-tier oil and gas companies? Let me apply to that. If these companies are not working, I'm also aware of, okay, if I can't get a job in oil and gas industry, is there another industry my research fits? You can see for me, I have a statistics background and data science background. Okay, so am I delving into tech? Always have a backdoor option open for your goals. And if none of that works, it's also fine. It's a situation of, okay, if you're a master's student, do you want to buy time, let's say, do another master's, or do you want to do a PhD? Perhaps now, because of everything happening, a PhD is sounding more likable and doable to you, right? Or is it a situation like, you want to just go back home, you're tired, you feel like you've done your possible best and it's time to just go back to Nigeria and, just rest and work. So for me, it's a bit of a trade-off. Some people do a graduate degree because they are forced to, in the sense that they couldn't get any other thing and they didn't want to go back home because everybody has the American dream, right? So that's the way that they have to move forward with it. And if you're trying to look for a job, I would suggest like you go through career fairs, all these online job fairs as well, they're virtual ones for diversity. I think right now I've had like a bit of diversity recruitment. People don't really talk much about it. We just hear like D&I, but it's actually a thing. You don't even need to be like excellent in what you do. You just need to be okay. And I know that most graduate students already have this severe case of imposter syndrome, thinking like, oh, I'm not good enough. And don't trust me, for you to be where you're at, you are good enough. So just apply for those jobs using the D&I quota. They would obviously get back to you on that. There are also like online normal job opening applications you could apply for. However, you still have the constraints of immigration. So what I suggest to people, at least from West Africa, is you could actually self-petition for your NIW. You don't need, people think you need to have a lot going on for you. You need to have a ton of papers, a ton of citations and all of that, but you actually don't. What you need to do is have a contribution towards research body. It could be like project presentation on how to tell your story, that whatever research you're working on is beneficial to the United States and all of that. And you can get the application through. That's a whole other process, but it's something that people need to know that is available. And I met grad students, I didn't even know it was a thing. I just got opportunity meeting somebody that told me about it and said, you didn't need to like even stress out about it, or so you won't be dependent on your OPT or H-1B and having all those, meltdowns about immigration. So there's that. I think that's all I have so far for now. I'll let other panelists talk. If I have anything to add, and I'll just raise my hand and say it.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any other submission?
So what was the question? Sorry, I missed that. I had to go grab something.
Yeah, so so in planning to graduate from graduate schools, right, what are some of the key items that a student has to consider, right? Yeah, so that probably after graduation, we don't feel stranded and all of that. So what are some of the key items that when we're about to graduate, we should consider? Yeah.
I think one of them is to look for internships and stuff, like use your CPT, not just relying on OPT, but using your CPT while you're in school to work with different organizations where you want to do a job, so they know how you work. So when you apply for a job there, it's easier for you to get the job. That's something I would suggest in any field, to use your CPT. Because that way you can work outside of campus to these organizations. So that's one thing. Keeping, like, if you're applying to stay in US, yes, you need to be more aware when you start your degree from your master's, to be prepared, like, okay, do I want a job, or do I want to like go ahead and for another master's or a PhD or whatever. So you need to be careful. Plus, one thing that I've noticed a lot of international students is that when we choose fields to stay in US, some fields are more wanted, some are not that wanted, like for job purposes. And a lot of students have trouble finding jobs. So when you're choosing, especially for the ones who are in undergrad and going for a master's degree, choosing a field that you know has more jobs or more chances of you to get a job with an H1, I think go for those fields. But then there's a conflict of interest based on like what you're interested in. But sometimes you have to make that call. For example, in my field, there might be jobs, but depending on what area do I focus on, may differ for job opportunities. So sometimes like I have to cautiously make decision, okay, which fields are more wanted in US for academia, for non-academia jobs, and then build your skill set with that. So having those toolbox for yourself. I think Midi was talking about those analysis, statistical analysis point of view. So having those tools like, okay, I can use these statistical softwares, R and Python and like Stata, SPSS, all these are your toolboxes. You can use ArcGIS, that's a toolbox that will get you more jobs out there. So if you're in a field which has less jobs, I would suggest developing these skills would be helpful. So qualitative or quantitative or geographical or any other software learning that will help you find jobs once you graduate. That is something you should be looking at.
Thank you very much, yeah, for your submission. Dr. Usua, do you have anything to say?
Well, I think both of them has touched on like a lot of the important stuff. So yeah.
All right.
But I guess it's okay if like you don't know where you want to be, you know, that like it takes time. And even like, I mean, I've started my career and still like you still have to have those times where you're figuring like, where do I really want to be? What do I really want to do? Right. So I know sometimes we get into that pattern of feeling like, oh, everybody knows where they're going and everybody knows what they're doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. And it's can be really stressful. That stress alone makes it even difficult for you to think. So I think what I'll add is that it's okay if right now you don't know. You know, just knowing that I don't know, it's a step, right? And then like beginning to think, okay, what do I want to do? What do I know? What do I know how to do? Right? Because yeah, just thinking through that. Do you want to do a PhD? I think one of the worst things you can do is doing a PhD that you don't want to do. You don't want to be stuck. Like the PhD, even if you want to do a PhD, it's hard. Right? Those who want to do it, who like start off with undergrad and they know I'm going to do a PhD, even those people struggle and get to a point. I tell people like, getting a PhD is not really about being smart. It's about you being focused and decided I'm going to get this thing done. So whether you're smart, whether you had first class or you didn't get first class, I don't think that matters. I feel like it's more, do I really want to do this? And I tell people all the time, you don't want to get stuck in a PhD program that you don't want to. And having an advisor that is frustrating you. It's the worst place you want to be in. So I think like taking your time to think through like exactly what do I want? If you want to work, what kind of connections do I need? What kind of internship do I need, right? If you are in a graduate program and you are in a master's program and you've only been a teaching assistant, but you know that you're not going to teach, you don't want to teach. Like that experience is great. You are working with students, but I mean, when you graduate, how is that going to help you, right? I've met somebody who did like an MBA, she did business and then an MBA. The person is a Ghanaian, but not an international student. But this person, like all through school, have been working in a nursing home. I'm like, who would hire you and give you a business position when all your work experience is in a nursing home? Like, you have the degree, but you don't have anything to show that you've been doing it. No internships, nothing, right? So I think for me, it's like, even if it's like free volunteering, right? When I did my master's, I did internships. All the internships that I had, they weren't jobs that were posted. I just reached out to them. I'm like, I'll work for free. Some of them didn't respond. There were some that I called. Even one of the ones that I got, when I called him, the guy was like, I don't have anything. And then a few weeks later, he called me. It's like, are you still available for an internship? I'm like, sure. And then when I went, I didn't know they were going to pay me. It's like, yeah, we're going to pay you. And I was like, great. And then when I started working, it's like, well, I didn't think I had time to train somebody else. I didn't want to like hire anybody. So, you know, just like knowing that, okay, I don't know where I'm going and what do I want to do and who do I connect with? Now there's Zoom. You can reach out to people that you feel like they're in positions that you would love to, and just like listen to them. Can we meet for like 30 minutes? share with me like your experience, how you got here, like what kind of things do I need to do if I want to be in this position? You know, those kind of interviews. I mean, a lot. I went to Toledo. Toledo is a good school, but now I'm at Case Western, which is like really, really great school. And you see the students and you're like, oh my gosh, these are the people I was competing for job with. Universities in America are not the same everywhere. Like the universities are not the same. Some have a lot of resources, some have a lot of support. And some of the PhD students that graduated from my lab, like they have interviews with people. The jobs that they got, they didn't just chance upon it online to apply. The advisor went to Vanderbilt and he's connected with people and they send her jobs and she forwarded and they get jobs, right? So you are still in the US, but you're still competing with people that don't have an accent, schooled in the US, went to better schools than you are going even in the US. So there's so many things that like, I think we have to do a little bit more, and the opportunity is there. I think once you step up and people know that you really want to learn, people are really willing to meet with you. You know, just, oh, can you briefly meet? I'm really interested in learning more about this position that you have. And, you know, this is the career that I want. Can you meet with me briefly to chat? People are willing to chat and share their experience. And that also gets your name out there, right? Even if they don't meet with you, now they know you're interested. When there's a position, they will email you and say, hey, here is a position, you can apply. I mean, I'm not going to give it to you, but this is what it's coming up. I think that's what I have to add.
Thank you very much for this insightful suggestions and submissions. Yes. One thing that I took it out of all that you said. I think Rafi did mention about the CPT, OPT, that you should get some experience which is related to the program that you're doing. Yeah, but I think there are some challenges that sometimes, let's say with petroleum over here in New Mexico, it's kind of difficult even getting an internship, right? Sometimes it becomes so difficult. Not that you're not interested in, not that you are not pushing, but it's kind of so difficult and challenging. And they demand, even for internship, they demand you being a green card holder, having your PR or a citizen. Yeah, so, well, in that kind of case where you're about to complete, but you have no work experience here in the US, so how are you going to go about it? So with that, does it mean that then maybe probably you just have to go for a higher, if you are doing a master's, maybe higher studies, a PhD, or probably just another master's, or you just want to take some online courses to enrich yourself in other fields and give it a shot in that industry?
I could answer your question on that,
All
or
right.
you could shed some light on your comments, because in that same exact shoe, petroleum engineer at OU, all my friends in Stanford, other big schools were having the internships, and I just had nothing. I think I had no internships in my master's at OU for 2 years, and I needed to graduate, right? But I knew I wanted to do a PhD, so that wasn't an issue. However, even though I was going to do a PhD, there was like, I think about 4 months gap. So I needed something doing. And I started to search for online remote work petroleum engineering jobs in the US. And this was before COVID was a thing. And I started talking to my advisor about it. Like, do you know anyone that needs statistical analysis and petroleum engineering? Even though I'm a petroleum engineer, I could do some stats work. I'm interested in stats. I took a couple of stats classes. And the question always came back to, do you know how to code and stuff like that? And I was like, yeah. So basically, I would tell every professor, like, if you know somebody that is looking for a job, like a short time offer, like it doesn't need to be something huge, just something to keep my mind active, let me know. And because I was so proactive about it, I eventually found one. It was a startup, an oil and gas startup company called Resume. And I remember working there for 4 months, and they took a chance, yes, but I also took a chance with them because they were a small company, right? And after working with them, I remember when they were like, oh, so are you going to stay on and work full time with us? I was like, no, I'm going for my PhD. the owner of the company gave this offer. He was like, whenever you feel like you want to have an internship, my doors are always open. You could always come back. So when you get those opportunities, it's not just about doing the barest minimum. You have to go and also show up so that it will open more doors. And that happened, I think 2019, I didn't go back for an internship with them. 2020, I went back. And then I was like, I kind of want to see how it feels working with, a big multinational company. And the person was like, oh, I do have a couple of friends somewhere. See, open more doors. So that way, even though you have to be intentional before the networking thing would become something and start paying off. I think that's the thing. And for you, I know you're in New Mexico, it might not be hard now to find, like, let's say, online remote petroleum engineering jobs. What I'll suggest is taking a statistics certificate course. It could be online, it could be one of the free ones. It could also be one affiliated with your university. And just take that. I think it's about maybe 3 classes or 4 classes if you still have time. If you don't have time, just take the IBM one online and you'll be fine. So that way you could also cross and not just focus on just petroleum alone.
Thank you very much for your submission. Yes. Yeah, so I could get that from all that they've said. Yeah, so it's not just about, you studying what you are majoring in, but have some time to also take some other courses. To bring kind of diversity that you're not being stranded, and you can also jump into some other fields, right? Yeah, and going for certain positions or something like that. You don't have to be perfect or to know everything before you apply, right? Yeah. Are you motivated about what you want to do? Sometimes they just want to see that zeal, that hunger that you want to actually achieve something, and yeah, they're gonna give you that. Yes. So I have a question, but it skipped me. Probably I should have asked that during the literature review something. Yeah, those kind of questions, they skipped me, but let me bring that up again. So in writing our thesis, right? In writing our thesis, what should we include and also exclude from the literature review? Because sometimes, for instance, certain maybe subjects that you want to write thesis on, they are kind of so broad that so many literatures are on it, or so many people have tackled that. So what type of literature should we add and what should we not add? And what actually influences our decision to, and the second part is what actually influences our decision to maybe, when we're writing our thesis, sometimes we just state that maybe did this, and we don't really expand it. But for some, we kind of dive into it, right? So what actually influences our decision to do that? So those are the questions, my 2 questions. The first question is, what should we include in our literature review and what we should not? And what we are going to include, what influences our decision to actually expand, go into details on a certain literature, and for others, just kind of merely or maybe just mention that, let's say, these kind of topics can be found in this, that, and just leave it like that. Is the question clear? If it is, anyone can tackle it. If it's not, I can also kind of repeat it. Yes.
I do understand your question. So selecting the literature review, the ones you elaborate on, let's say you write a paragraph for, and the ones that you just feel like these people, you are not worth more than 2 sentences in my thesis, right? You do that based on the story you're trying to tell. At the end of the day, the goal of research is you're trying to tell a story of the gap, people that have shown that the gap exists, people that are showing that, okay, they've done tried different ways or methods to solve that gap. And you saying that all these people, previous people showing that the gap exists, these previous people using their method still has a gap, and that's when your proposal comes into view. So you want to choose literature, so to say, that will help you solidify your hypothesis or your motivation, so to say, what you're proposing. I feel like it'll be impossible to put every literature in relation to your topic into one dissertation. So you have to be deliberate and choose. And what I would say is choose the ones, there are some of these very unique literatures that would have referred to, let's say 20 papers that talked about the same topic. So just cite one person. That one person has already dragged the worth of 20 people into their work. So you have to look for papers like that are good enough standalone to pull that kind of traffic for your literature review, so to say, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Are there any other suggestions?
Yeah, I was gonna add one of the things that prior to like doing a thesis or dissertation in the US I didn't know was making sure that there are like people in your field that you can't talk about certain things without citing them. Everybody will be like, oh, you're talking about this topic and you don't know this person. Why is this person not in there? So I think that's definitely like a thing here in the US. It's like when you're publishing, they are looking for, okay, like, well, if you're talking about this topic, you definitely, if you've read widely, you would cite this person. So figuring out like who those people are in the field that you are working in, who are those people that everybody is citing and everybody is referencing. It's like, okay, this person is like the father of that that concept. Yeah. And mostly like once you get to those people's papers and you cite them, because all the other people are citing that person, you don't need to cite all the 100 people that are citing this person, right? You already like got the source and you found that person that everybody is citing. So that is one way of deciding. I think another way is also like figuring out like what kind of arguments are you making, right? You don't just jump into literature because I just want to review. Like, what is your question? And in what ways is the literature supporting that question? Once you have that link, you'll be able to like decipher, okay, is this relevant or not? I mean, some people don't like it when you are citing like 10 people for one sentence. It's like, okay, like, what do you mean? Yeah, so like drilling down to exactly the points. And I think that also comes to like, you have to be clear when you make a point in a sentence or in a paragraph. That makes it easier to just cite one person, right? There are times that you say, well, all these people have also said the same thing, and you can cite them in addition to that. But I think figuring like who are the experts, and it takes time to figure out who those people are, right? As you read, like keeping track, okay, who is citing who, and who is citing this person. And I think now one easier way is with the systematic reviews, right? Now you can find a paper that has like summarized 100 papers in just that one manuscript. If you find those are very helpful, because then you would be able to say, okay, like this is how this person categorized it. Are these relevant to my work or not? And then you can dive deeper and start looking for those papers too. So yeah, I don't think there's any easy way to do it or any like step 1, step 2 that you can just follow. I think it's more like, what are you doing and how relevant? Yeah, I think those days we are interested in page numbers and like having more, but now it's like, if it's not adding any value to your literature, why keep it? Right. So making sure that each thing you add is adding value and it makes sense, rather than just like, I saw all these papers and I just want to put them in here.
Okay, thank you very much. And one follow-up question to this is when you are referencing, right? I mean, sometimes you want to reference a certain paper, but you search and you're not even finding that paper. Very probably that paper is so old that, well, I just don't know. You're not able to find that paper, but you're able to find another paper who referenced the paper that you want to actually, but that paper, you cannot find it. So how do you kind of reference that in your thesis that you're writing? So are you going to reference maybe the paper that you found that knowledge in it, who has also referenced another person, and also reference that other person that whose paper you cannot find? So, or you just reference the one you found and it should be okay. Yeah. So that's my question.
You reference the one you found that you can find either the PDF version, the scanned version, or the hard copy version. You only reference what you can see or touch, like virtually or in person. Every other thing you can't see or touch, you have to like let it go. However, I do have a story. I think for the last year, I was looking for a particular paper that everybody seems to reference. Everybody has references seems to reference, but I couldn't find the paper. And then I was complaining to my advisor about it. Like, I feel like there's something critical in that paper. Why is everybody referencing it, right? And then he was like, he referenced it during his PhD because my advisor was like something, but he couldn't find the paper. And then, you know, and then we went to one of the older professors in the department that's like 70 something years old. And then I spoke to him about it, like, do you have this paper? And then he was like, he's not sure, but he'll check. And he did check and got back to me last weekend with a scanned version of the paper. So it matters on how far you want to go to get the paper that is not available.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Doreen, do you have any questions?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So with respect to what Dr. Usua Yamwa said about site, usually including the inventors or maybe the people who are known for these kind of things you are doing. Sometimes you see my professor or some professors express like this interest when even you present at journal clubs a very old paper like 1978, because they feel they've been upgraded and people have taken up whatever they did and they have optimized stuff a lot and they've included a lot of things. Like maybe you had initially in 1978, they didn't have like fluorescence detection machines. So they were doing thin layer chromatography and all to detect like the presence of compounds that they are looking for. But now people have taken these things that they were doing in 1978 and now they've developed like a fluorescence machine that detects and shows the signal and all that. So I'm wondering if the 1978 founder thing is the originator or the person who brought something, including that person in your presentations or in your thesis. Do you think they'll still think that you're not reading wide because you're not current or something? Because Dr. Yamwa mentioned you need to really have some of these people on there just to exclude anybody who has cited them. So I just want to know if it's more important to look at the upgrade or the current stuff, even if they are not the people known for this stuff. Please, is my question clear?
Yeah, it's oh, go ahead, Rafia.
It is very clear. So you have to remember one thing, that you're talking about the canon of the field. So you're referencing the people, old or new, but someone who has brought up the knowledge. So there could be a situation where a recent paper had something that was never taught before, but now it's like one of the part of the canon of your field. So yes, you will reference them and forget about what was in the past. So some theories, for example, get rejected after like years and years. You don't reference them.
Okay.
So things like that. So those are things I think you need to really focus on. Focus on the canon, the people you're going to mention who makes that field, whatever you're researching, important.
Okay.
Yeah. Another way would be like if it's something that they build upon, then you would, you know, in your narration, you say like, yeah, in this person, like, you know, first discovered this theory of gravity in 1975, but then in recent years, there's been more advances, and here are the new things that have happened.
Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise, when you meet somebody who is an expert in that field, they'll be like, "Oh, where is this person? Like, how can you write this paper without citing that person?" And also, like what I found, even like working a case, some students even reach out to these people, and they meet with them and they talk to them, and they're like, "Hey, I know you're an expert in this field. Like, can you meet with me?" And they will meet with them. Like, they are like humans like us. They'll meet and then they will share, like the students will share. Like, I think it's more of like having confidence and like feeling like I want to learn from you. I'm a student. I'm a first year master's student, but I've read your paper. I know you are great. I just want to talk to you and share with you my ideas. What do you think? Sometimes it's just nothing. It's just like wanting them to know your names. So that's some, because those are the people that will review the papers that you'll be writing in that field. They're the same people. They wouldn't know your name, but then because they know the idea, they would know that you were the one who wrote that paper.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Osua. Yeah, so quick one from Rafia. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was gonna piggyback on her. Remember, whoever you feel like, okay, I like this paper and I really need to talk to this author for clarification or anything, just email the person. Honestly, the worst you can get is a no or no reply at all. So doesn't matter. Most of the time, academics honestly love to talk about their own research. So they will definitely reply you. But I have always had trouble, like, how do I just email this person and ask for this? Honestly, in last few years, I've learned this. The worst that can happen is no. They'll say, no, I don't have time, or they won't even reply to my email. So what? Okay, they're lost. They lost a student who was interested in their research, but most of the time they will reply. So do have that confidence to do it.
All right. Thank you very much for your submissions. Yeah, so yeah, to summarize everything, I mean, what our panelists and what you've discussed so far, I mean, so what should one know about the writing of the thesis? I mean, the time requirement, I mean, formatting styles, you're getting, I mean, your graduate handbook to know what style maybe your department uses and all of that, and the effective ways in which we can also write our thesis. I mean, in terms of, let's say, with the literature review, and there's kind of no step 1, step 2, or step 3, right? So you start with what chapter or what session that you are very comfortable with, whether if it's the result session or maybe the methodology. Maybe you also want to start with reviewing some literatures to actually know your problem statement and getting your objectives. And what are some of the resources that we can actually, I mean, help us with rewriting the thesis? You did mention of Mendeley, citing tools, Grammarly to help us with the sentencing. We have Killboard for paraphrasing. Yeah, and we also need to plan as you're about to graduate that we will graduate and we are not going to be stranded. So, I mean, the time, we have to get some time to, I mean, think about it. And it's actually okay to know, not to know your next step is also part of that thoughts. And yeah, whether you still want to, I mean, go into academia or in the industry. And our panelists did mention that we also have to take some additional courses so that, I mean, kind of, we are diverse. I mean, we can move into different industries. And we should have this in mind that, I mean, the recruiters, it's not just about you being perfect, a perfect match, but you having that hunger and the zeal to actually, I mean, get the work done. Yeah, so Dr. Usua, I can see your hands up. Do you have?
Yeah, one thing that I feel like we didn't talk a lot about is IRB. If you're doing primary data collection, IRB can take a lot of time to get approval. I've had like some papers that like the IRB took 5 months or 6 months. It could take that long, depending on how much workload they have. I have worked with the IRB before, so I know like on the back end, they always have a lot of things that they are working on. They have a lot of protocols that they are reviewing. So if you know for sure that you're going to need an IRB protocol, you need to get on that like as soon as possible. Figuring like what kind of materials do I need to submit to them? Who do I need to reach out to? If you're going to recruit, who are you recruiting through? If like, for instance, you're doing something in a school, you need to go to the school to recruit students. That is a whole different process. If you're working with children, that's a whole different process. If you're working with pregnant women, depending on what kind of intervention you're doing, if it's just an interview, a focus group, or a questionnaire, like figuring that out. If you know for sure that you're going to do primary data collection, you definitely need to get on as soon as possible.
Thank
with
you
the time
very
that you
much.
have.
All right, thank you very much for your submission. Rafia, yeah, I can see your hand there.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback on her on RB. Recently, I submitted an RB in like November, and it took 2 months, almost 3 months. I just got approval like last week on my RB, and it was supposed to be the expedited RB approval. And it took about 2.5 months. So keep that in mind. That should be your first thing to go. And for applying for IRB, I think you need to have your research protocol, your flyers for getting your recruitment running, your methodology predefined. Everything should be done before you think about going for IRB, because they're going to ask for those. And as long as you have them pretty quick, it'll be easier for you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so please, if you still do have some other questions, you can email that to grassacusa@gmail.com. The other executive are going to put that email in the chat box, so that if you do have any other questions to any of the panelists, we can send that to them and it will be addressed. So now I'm going to call upon Nanajua to give us the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Nanajua. Oh, okay. It seems Nanajua just probably she's having
We lost her. We lost her. Let me give the vote of thanks.
Okay.
So I would like to thank everyone for making time for this program, especially to our panelists. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your knowledge and experience with us so that we can learn from you and be effective in what we are doing. So we are very grateful for everything that you've shared with us. And I'm hoping that in the near future, we can point back and say, hey, I attended this program and Mide or Dr. Yamwa spoke about this, and when I did it, it really helped. So thank you all once again. Now I'll give the announcement. But before I do that, I would let Janet start. So Janet, if you're ready, can you share the announcement with us?
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for making it to this meeting, and also to our panelists, we say thank you very much. Just a quick one. So GRASAC USA is currently soliciting for funds to support our activities. And our major activities for this year include GRASAC USA Research Conference, and also application fee waiver support to support our dear ones who want to make it to university here in the US. And so I quickly shared something to our chat, and it includes some links where we can make our donations to support our funds. So far, we have been able to raise an amount of $1,250, and that is through support from alumni and also students here in the US. And we are left with $2,750 because our total budget for activities is $4,000, and $3,000 to support the application fee waiver for people who want to enroll into university here in the US, and $1,000 to support our upcoming GRASAC research conference, and $3,000 to support students who want to come here, basically because we want to support about 30 students, so $100 for each student. And so if you want to donate, share the link to our chat. You can kindly donate to support us. And we are soliciting for any amount. I mean, it shouldn't be that outrageous. Any minimum amount you can get to support us, we'll be very grateful for that. And just to add that, we are also planning on producing some souvenirs to support our upcoming conference also, and as a way of contributing to support GRASAC USA. And so I will share a link to the chat also. It's a survey, so I will encourage us all to just click on the link and go and fill the survey, just to help us have an idea of what kind of souvenirs you will be interested to have, to be able to print that out and also support our upcoming conference. That's all I have, and you can just look at the chat and get more information on what I've said now. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you so much. In addition to what Janet said, in February we have another program designed mainly for those who are back home who wants to join us, but have had admission and are waiting to apply for the US F1 student visa. So if you have people, if you know people who you think this event will be beneficial for them, when you see our post, we encourage you to share it and just talk to your friends and those you know about our upcoming programs. We have a program each month, so you can stay in tune on our social media websites or on WhatsApp or through email. You should get our messages. And in addition, we are in need of a graphic designer. So if any of us have graphic designing skills and also interest in joining the leadership of GRASAG, would really entreat you to get in touch with us so that we can have you on board. Yeah, that will be all for the announcement. So thank you all once again and have a good rest of your week. One last thing, sorry, please don't go. I would like us to take a picture. So I'm going to remove the pin so that we can see all of our faces on the screen. So please, if you want to put on your camera, that would be great. And I'll take the picture. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then you can smile. Or however you want your picture to look like. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, we are good. Thank you so much and have a good time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bless, kindly share the pictures with us, please.
Okay, I will. I actually took just one, but I'll send it to you.
You can send it to the group.
Okay, sure.